This episode of the Demonic Compendium contains spoilers for the following titles. Viewer discretion is advised. This episode may also contain visual imagery that some may find disturbing. Please watch at your own risk. Welcome to a meditative new episode of the Demonic Compendium, the show where I discuss the mythology, design, and game history of your favorite Megami Tensei demons. If you're going to get through the holiday season unscathed, you may need to adapt a sense of calmness and determination. So, cross your legs and double check how to pronounce Om Man Padme Hum, cause today, we're talking about Daisoujou. The thing to know about this demon before I really dive into things is that the way MegaTen presents it makes it arguably two different figures, Daisoujou and Sokushinbutsu, the latter of which I'll explore further in the next section. So, what is Daisoujou? The rough translation simply refers to it as High Priest, but I think it's important to understand that it goes so much further beyond that. A Soujou is a high-ranking Buddhist monk usually employed by government temples, and the Daisoujou is the highest of High Priest monks, with it often being a title reserved for those who ascended to Buddhahood during their lifetime. Case in point, Kukai is one of the most prominent monks in Japanese history. He founded Shingon Buddhism, which is one of the primary sects of Japanese Buddhism that's prevailed throughout the centuries. It's an understatement to say that he was kind of a big deal, and even he was only given the title of Daisoujou posthumously. I'm not entirely sure how the title is used in modern Japanese religious temples, but it's a badge of great honor and respect that shouldn't be taken lightly. Which is why I'd just like to say before I do my usual thing of reading the compendium entry, that despite his name and design having real-world origins, in MegaTen the lore behind this demon actually seems to be a mostly original story, making it somewhat unique in that the established backstory doesn't necessarily connect to what most entries say. Daisoujou's compendium entry from Persona 5, the Phantom X, refers to it as a monk who died while fasting. His spiritual power allows his body to continue to exist without rotting. It is said that he will appear before people on the day of salvation. Hey, real quick, if you like what I'm doing, please consider commenting, subscribing, maybe even checking out the Patreon. It honestly does all help a lot. Thanks, moving on. Design-wise, here's where I want to get into the subject of the Sokushinbutsu, because Daisoujou's MegaTen design is that. Like, literally just that. Specifically, he seems most modeled after the Buddhist monk Daijuku Bosatsu Shinyokai Shonin, whose mummy rests at the Ryusuiji Dainichio Temple in Yokohama. But, okay, let's back up. What is a Sokushinbutsu? This phrase, which roughly translates as preserved Buddha body, refers to a historic form of meditation and self-mummification. Monks would starve themselves for about 3 years, and then entomb themselves in a small space so they could sit cross-legged while wearing ceremonial attire and holding a bell. The tomb had a small tube for air, and every day one of the monks would check to see if the pre-mummy could still ring the bell. When the bell fell silent, they removed the air tube and completely sealed up the tomb for 1,000 days. Monks that stayed preserved throughout this process were revered and given holy status. While this form of religious suicide was outlawed in Japan in the 1870s, quite a few of these mummies are still preserved at temples and are available for visitors to see. They range in terms of preservation, with some being mostly bone, while others having relatively intact skin. While Long Fodang, a Thai Buddhist monk who died while meditating in 1973 and was preserved as a mummy, is not technically a Sokushinbutsu, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him because, come on, check out those sweet Ray-Bans. The closest thing Daisoujou really has to an alternative design in the franchise is having both a censored and uncensored design in Persona 5 the Phantom X, with the former removing his more skeletal elements, or skelements, in favor of more human-like hands and a hockey mask-like face? I have no idea how to describe this. One aspect I really like about this artwork is that it highlights the flower design on his robes, which Kaneko's art lacks, despite it being visible in most of his 3D models. The sunflower is a common symbol of faith and devotion in Buddhism, further connecting to his lore as a devout monk. Overall, this is just a great design. It connects to history, and the figure contains so many elements, from the bell to the Buddhist prayer beads. I love Daisoujou. He's one of my favorite demons in the entire franchise, and one I'm really happy to talk about today and share this bit of backstory with you all. As far as game history goes, Daisoujou dates back to the earliest Shin Megami Tensei, where he was one of the original 3 fiends, and in the only officially localized version of SMT1, he was actually called High Priest. Despite being a monk, he was actually associated with the Chaos alignment, and defeating him could potentially unlock the strongest weapon for the Chaos Hero. It's interesting to me that despite being one of the original fiends, Daisoujou was excluded from a lot of titles that feature these generally optional boss fights, like Shin Megami Tensei 4, Apocalypse, King of Baden, and Strange Journey. Still, he hasn't been as excluded from the franchise as much as David. Poor David. But of course he does have a notable presence in Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where he appears in Ikebukuro as the first optional fiend battle. Daisoujou aims to collect the menorahs to bring his own form of salvation to humanity through death, even telling the demi-fiend that man is destined to die. Defeating Daisoujou unlocks him for fusion and gives the demi-fiend the Menorah of Eternity. By the way, I'd just like to say that I love Daisoujou's voice in this game, and according to the Megami Tensei wiki, he was actually played by the late Stephen Greif. Someone on Atlus's marketing team must have loved his performance too, because they used a voice clip from his optional boss fight in one of the main trailers for the HD remaster.
Man is destined to die, and the world to end. Yet still, you challenge the order of the universe.
Daisoujou has a similar role in Shin Megami Tensei 5, where the Nahobino may fight him in Shinagawa to collect his menorah. While the Fiend battles were originally DLC exclusive, anyone with a copy of Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance can fight him now. Beating him unlocks him for fusion, which requires a special recipe of Atis, Sudama, and Kodama. Daisoujou also tends to have some unique skills in these games, like Meditation, which acts as a powerful almighty HP-MP drain, and Preach, which has a high chance of inflicting status ailments on all foes. In the mobile title, Shin Megami Tensei Liberation D2, Daisoujou has a small role in the intermission chapter 6 Cuts of the Dead, where Chalk Eater enlists his friend's help and unpaid labor to fulfill his dream of directing his own horror movie. He brings the gang out to film at a supposedly haunted temple to film a scene of them acting as filmmakers filming at a supposedly haunted temple. Of course, the temple is actually haunted, and they must fight off a boss Daisoujou who says, "Hail to Buddha Amida," before the battle. After beating him, that's a wrap, and we move on to the next scene. And going back to the original Shin Megami Tensei, the Chaos Hero in D2 actually has a specific spell where he summons Daisoujou to perform a powerful Mudo spell, likely as a direct connection to his role as his weapon dropper in that first title. In Persona 3, Daisoujou has the unique spell Samsara, which serves as the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. It's basically a super-powered Mahama'an with a very high chance of killing all foes with light damage. Elizabeth has a request where she asks Makoto to fuse a Daisoujou, which you accomplish via a special fusion consisting of the 4 Mitamas and Mithra. Elizabeth, or Theo in Portable, will comment that fusing this persona showcases your improved mastery of fusion and gives you Ken's winter outfit as a reward. Actually, that's just in Portable. In earlier versions, you get the space badge. That's my bad, sorry. In Persona 3 Reload, Elizabeth has a similar request, but now asks for a Daisoujou that specifically has the passive skill Regenerate 3. Daisoujou is no longer a special fusion in Reload, so this is a relatively easy fusion recipe to perform. Though Elizabeth seems to disagree, since she says it's no easy feat to fuse one with this skill, and that it's truly admirable, before bestowing upon you the blue shorts, aka Makoto's swimsuit outfit. One weird detail I noticed in Reload is that it's basically the only game where Daisoujou's 3D model doesn't have the flower pattern on his robes, making it more closely resemble Kaneko's original artwork. Except Reload doesn't feature the artwork, and even in FES, a game that featured both art and model, it had the flower design on his 3D self. I'm not complaining or anything, I just found it a bit bizarre. Going back to Samsara for a moment, in early versions of Persona 3, you actually could transfer this ability to other personas. Daisoujou was just the only one who naturally learned it. However, starting in Persona 4, no one else could inherit the skill, making it a truly signature ability for Daisoujou. However, despite the title taking a lot from Persona 4, Persona 3 Portable still allowed you to transfer Samsara onto other personas, but it once again remained a signature skill in later titles like Persona 5 and Reload. I have no doubt this will still be the case in the upcoming Persona 4 revival, especially since Persona 4 started this tradition in the first place. But as someone who still plays FES, I always found it interesting that other Personas could get it in that game. I'm also curious if Persona 4 Revival will keep the reload model where we don't see the flowers on his robe. In Persona 5, sending Daisoujou to the electric chair will give players a Makoga skill card, but in Persona 5 Royal, which actually lowered the monk's level, he'll create a Spiral Blessing Ring or a Divine Ring if an alarm is in effect. Ren can also go to the capsule machines in Akihabara and spend his hard-earned money. One of the figurines you can get is the Daisoujou, which the game says is a figure of a dying Daisoujou. It's cute. However, a joke many Western players likely missed is that the covetous man who will trade you stuff for your figurines says that the Daisoujou isn't very valuable, except for its size. This is because in Japan, the toy had an extra kanji on its name, making it the Daisoujou-o, or Large Daisoujou, giving it a completely different type of wordplay between the two languages. In the other mobile title, Persona 5 The Phantom X, Daisoujou has some unique mini-boss encounters in the third block of Mementos. Both fights require the Daisoujou to reach full health in order for you to win the battle, with its allies actually being the one to attack it. In one fight, players need to quickly wipe out the Onmaraki, who will respawn at a rate of 1 per turn and attack Daisoujou, while the monk heals by draining your energy. And the other has an Onmaraki and Sarasvati, with the cooked bird attacking the monk and Sarasvati healing him. The game has some genuinely clever mini-bosses, and I like seeing stuff like this. The name of the drain spell he uses in the one fight is even called Sokushin, a direct reference to his Sokushinbutsu origins. Love or hate P5X, there is some great stuff in here. Like I said before, Daisoujou is just one of my favorite demons in this franchise, so I was really excited to talk about this one. Thank you for joining me and allowing me to indulge in one of my desires. And there you have it, Daisoujou, the dried-up, dead-dressed devotee desiring deification. Did I leave out something you thought was important? Was I just plain wrong about something? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know who you'd like to see me talk about in future episodes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Demonic Compendium, and I will see you next time. But be careful while you rest that a demon doesn't take over your body.